From Miami Beach in business today, 3 things to know. First, the market's wild ride. At one point, it was the worst day for the Dow since October. Then the market actually went up and then finished down. What's driving stocks? Then, shoring up the housing market, why the turnaround might be on more solid footing. And the art world comes to the beach, but why the real fun at Art Basel is happening on the streets. Arise Exchange starts now.
Well, hello, I'm Julian Phillips in New York.
And I'm Andrew Schmertz in Miami Beach at Art Basel. We'll take a look at the art market and a look at the good life. That's coming up. But first, Julian has today's top stories.
Okay, Andrew, thanks a lot. Upbeat data suggests the economy continues to improve, especially on the jobs front. Jobless claims dropped by 17,000 last week to a seasonally adjusted 297,000, according to the Labor Department. With the U.S. stock market pulling back from record highs yesterday, here's a look at the final numbers. Nothing but red across the board. The Dow down 12 points to 17,900. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ both ending the day down slightly. Top stocks we are watching today. Sears reported its 12th straight quarter of losses. Sears lost $528 million in its third quarter, which was slightly better than estimated. Okay. The Sears dropping more than 4% to $32.75. Barnes & Noble reported earnings per share of 12 cents, missed expectation in its third quarter. Barnes & Noble says it is also purchasing Microsoft's share of Nook. Barnes & Noble closing down almost 5.5% to $21.03. Aeropostale is ramping up its store closures just in time for the holiday season. Well, the teen apparel maker says it plans to close 75 stores across the country in its fourth quarter, which runs from November to January. Aeropostale closing tanking 22% to $2.48. Ugh. Now for a look at commodities. Gold sliding down to $1,206.50 an ounce, and oil closing at $66.76 a barrel. Lower gas prices, folks. Well, for more on the economy and what we can expect for tomorrow's jobs report, Chris Slow, FTN Financial's chief economist, joins us now. Chris, welcome to Arise Exchange.
Thank you.
You know, this almost seems, Chris, like a tale of two cities. It seems like the economy is doing well, but it seems like also consumers are perhaps spending less because of health care costs going up and the like. What's going on here?
Well, that's right. You know, if you think about it, it's not so much they're spending less, but they're shifting spending. It's that monthly bill for the cell phone, which is just monstrous, you know, and it's higher medical expenses, which are forcing people to cut spending on other things. And apparel, which you just mentioned, Aeropostale, that's one of the places that's been hit hardest.
Well, some people are actually being killed here. I know online sales actually are doing pretty well here, but going into the season, the numbers came out here much less than I think that the experts actually expected for spending during this holiday season.
Well, that's right. You know, the first number we saw was Black Friday sales, and that actually covers the whole 4 days, including Thanksgiving, including online. It was down 11% from last year. But we won't know until January how the holiday season was, because people's spending patterns are changing so fast. And, you know, last year the big surprise was we had a push at the end. It turned out to be okay.
Sure. You know, one thing we really don't know totally yet, but a lot of experts are saying that the healthcare costs really might skyrocket, and this might be, you know, kind of a spear in the side there for the Obama administration. But here's the key, though, Chris. Inflation is still very low. So it seems to me with inflation as low as it is here, and even mortgage rates are still low, it seems like things might be a little bit better, and people might be more prone to spend money.
Yeah, they should be. And I think the key is they actually are spending more money. But again, you know, they're spending more money, so much more on healthcare, on the internet, on their phones, these monthly costs, that they don't have enough left for discretionary things. But I think it will get better. Healthcare costs should stabilize. We've made the adjustment to the Affordable Care Act. They're not going to go up that much more.
You know, I'm going to hold you to that, because a lot of people are really concerned about that. Let's take a focus overseas, a European bank over there. Of course, the president's saying he'll do whatever he do to help things in 2015. What's your prognosis for that?
Well, one theory, he's been promising to do whatever it takes for 3 years. And frankly, they haven't done much of anything yet. But what has happened is the market has taken interest rates down to just remarkably low levels. Here in the U.S., you get about 2.25% for a 10-year note. In Germany, it's less than 1%. So essentially, he's given the economy the boost that he would by doing quantitative easing without doing it, by making these repeated promises. But patience is wearing a little thin.
Well, I say lastly here, unemployment, of course, the numbers are down, but I'm guessing, if I read the tea leaves here, that the numbers are down because people are hiring more during the holiday season. Can we expect to see numbers to go down and remain the same, or perhaps go up after the holiday is over?
Well, you'll have a lot of volatility, and it always do in those jobless claim numbers. But tomorrow we get hiring numbers, and so far this year, we've had 200,000 new jobs or more every month. I looked back, it's the first time since 1999 we've put a streak together like that. So that's one reason to be quite optimistic going forward.
All right, and the beat goes on. Chris Lowe, thank you very much. And coming up, the housing market, and we'll talk more about that when Arise Xchange returns. Stay with us.
The search continues for the more than 200 abducted schoolgirls.
Unquestionably, this is a Nigerian problem.
President Barack Obama stopped short of visiting the border. Why can't Washington get anything done when it comes to immigration reform?
But you got to come up with a solution to it, and no one has a real solution.
Does this further terrorize people, make them more afraid, or is this making people angry? Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
Global. It's Monday, so it must be time for a new round of sanctions against Russia.
Nigeria is open for business, and you are getting a handle on this situation.
Compelling. Time for liquid lunch, things that make us want to drink. Could she have been separated at birth from, say, Grimace? All business.
Money's coming out of these countries, and that flow is part of what's driving the equity markets.
Entertaining money daily.
It's about reimagining.
Arise Xchange.
Well, welcome back to Arise Xchange. The nation's housing market is picking up steam, thank goodness. A significant indication the economy is strengthening. Analysts say new home sales are expected to climb by more than 25% next year. One factor in the increase, new home buyers. Well, job growth is empowering younger buyers to purchase homes at a growing rate. Welcome back to FTN Financial's Chris Lowe. Here's the thing, though. The housing starts seem to be up, but some indicators say the housing market is strong, some saying it's weak. It seems kind of schizophrenic. Explain this.
Yeah, we're still working through a huge glut of single-family homes in particular that were built during the housing boom. So there's still that excess supply. And it's taking a while for millennials to make that commitment to form households, to buy a house, which is what you expect after you see a bust like we had in the job market during the Great Recession. So the thinking is starting in the next year or two, that should begin to shift. But when I look at the numbers, it is still a mixed picture. Housing starts are half what they were in the last cycle. But home sales, they are beginning to improve.
Well, I think that the big savior here, correct me if I'm wrong, are the low mortgage rates. I mean, they're extremely low at this point.
Extraordinary, yeah. 30-year fixed rate mortgages now are, they're down again last week. They're below 3.75%.
That's amazing.
It's fantastic. The tough thing is it's harder to qualify than it used to be.
Right.
Long run, that's a good thing. But, you do have to have a job, you do have to have income, and the down payments are still pretty sizable.
I want to talk about where some of these housing starts are and where perhaps the best place might be to get a house. But the mortgage rates, I'm hearing from the banks, look, you better fix something in right now because it's not going to be this way always. In fact, maybe in the next 2, perhaps 3 years, you're going to see these mortgage rates start to rise.
They should, yeah. The Federal Reserve has been telling us at every meeting this year, and I think probably again in a week and a half, they are planning to raise interest rates next year. And when they do, I would think those mortgage rates are going to go higher.
Okay, let's talk about the good news first. What are some of the strongest housing markets in the U.S.?
Well, the strongest markets are where the economy is strongest. So it's primarily in the middle part of America. We're seeing housing formation in Texas. We're seeing construction starting to spread through the Southeast. And maybe, up into parts of New England. But where we had that really boom housing economy, we're not seeing it yet. So, for example, the New York area, Chicago, but the West Coast, though, even California is beginning to clear. We're beginning to see some construction out there.
Do you think that with the natural disasters, we've been covering this here on Arise News, of course, in Xchange, and the economic impact it's had, especially in Napa Valley with the earthquakes and stuff like that, even with that, housing starts are still pretty good, that the prognosis is still pretty good?
Yeah, because the economy there is pretty good. The other thing we're seeing is, of course, multifamily starts. Walking around here in New York City, for example, you'll notice there are some pretty spectacular new buildings going up.
Oh, yeah.
The condo demand here is super.
Okay, in terms of the places you want to stay away from, some of the weakest markets in the United States.
Well, the vacation markets primarily. They're always the last to recover and the first to take a hit. And so, for example, if you look at coastal markets down in Florida, for instance, still a lot of supply down there.
Yeah, there's an area, of course, Andrew Schmertz has been talking about this. We featured it yesterday. I think it's called the Brickell area. In fact, it's really growing there residentially. It's taking some, I guess, some of the star luster away from South Beach. Why is that area starting to boom?
Well, because it's less expensive. South Beach is super pricey, and it's. So you are seeing people making those decisions. I think they're.
But those are people, Chris, sorry to cut you off. Those are people, we have less than a minute here. Those are people who have cash, though. I mean, if you have solid cash, then maybe it is less expensive. But if you don't have that, that's not where you really want to invest.
Right, and it's also hard to get into. But that it brings up the other buyer. Which is the foreign buyer. We've got a lot of cash coming in from South America. We have a lot of cash coming out of Europe, and we have cash coming out of Asia, and that is giving you strength in South Florida and in California. And, essentially what that is it's people trying to diversify away from economies that are right now potentially in trouble because the commodity markets aren't doing very well.
All right, well, that'll have to be the last word. We're hoping that this housing market will stay steady. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, Chris Lowe. Time now for our business ticker. Stories making headlines across the nation and indeed around the world. Lawmakers are joining the chorus of voices critical of Japanese airbag manufacturer Takata. House members at an Energy and Commerce subcommittee meeting blasted the company for not making its recall of faulty airbags nationwide. Takata contends the evidence doesn't support such a broad recall and that the U.S. government doesn't have the authority to demand one. Well, meanwhile, Chrysler and Ford have expanded their recall of Takata's defective airbags. Fast food workers walked off the job for higher pay today. Again, staff members at the nation's leading fast food chains in nearly 200 cities took to the street to push for a living wage. Protesters are rallying for a $15 minimum wage and the right to unionize. We'll have to wait and see on that. Well, the largest auction of digital currency in history is underway. The U.S. Marshals Service is auctioning off 50,000 Bitcoin seized when the black market website Silk Road was shut down. Now, they're worth an estimated $18.6 million. However, we won't know exactly how much they will go for or who won them until Friday. Stay tuned here for that. Well, Kim Kardashian can take a few notes on how to break the internet from Korean pop sensation Psy. Well, YouTube says it had to redevelop its view counter after the viral video Gangnam Style, you remember that, got well over 2 billion views. Well, the flamboyant costumes and signature dance moves took the internet by storm when it was released in 2012. Well, the new limit for YouTube views is now above 9 quintillion. And of course, we'll break that here to Rise News. Okay, back to sunny Miami with that sun-drenched tan that Andrew Schmertz has. Andrew, what's going on?
Okay, stand by. Hey, Julian, you know there's a lot of money in Miami and a lot of famous people who need their money managed, including successful artists. Joining us now is Horace Madison. He is the CEO of the Madison Financial Group, and thank you for joining us. You are a long-time Miami resident. You've been to this a few times. Tell us about your thoughts as the show kicks off.
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. And yes, I've been a Miami person for quite a long time, formerly a resident for over a decade now, and I've definitely been to a number of shows. And the thing that I've seen is that the shows have grown so much, not only in size, but in terms of diversity. You see a lot more diversity of people attending the shows, see a lot more diversity in terms of people checking out and buying artwork, and of course the artists that are putting up artwork.
When you work with celebrities and artists who are creative individuals, how do they compare when it comes to managing their money?
That can be pretty creative also. They don't follow any of the traditional investment or financial management or money management approaches or philosophies. It's way more emotional. And it makes sense because artistic people are passionate people. And so they will be inclined to invest in things more because of their heart than necessarily their head. So what I try to do is find that balance between, okay, does this make sense, intellectually, but do you feel good about it? Are you into it? And are you going to feel good about holding on to this position or being actively involved with this venture down the road?
How do you keep them from losing all their money? Because we keep reading about stories about celebrities who make really terrible investments.
It's an ongoing process. It's not an event. And there's no one set formula. It's constantly educating my clients about their money and about finance, and realize people lose their money for a lot of different reasons. Bad investments, lack of understanding, lack of knowledge of how much money they have. So diversity helps, diversifying where their money is. But I think the biggest thing is exposing them to their spending habits and exposing how they're overspending and that their revenue won't continue forever, in addition to not putting it into bad investments.
And they come around with a large entourages sometimes.
Yeah, that never helps.
That never
helps. I mean, that's a simple concept. You have too much overhead.
For artists, they can go from being dirt poor to being super wealthy quickly. So when that person walks into your door, what do you tell them?
Well, I think it's important to differentiate. Yes, they can go from being, dirt poor, but they're not really wealthy. They're making a lot of money, and I think that's where the confusion happens. Is they start believing that they are wealthy when really they're generating a lot of revenue, and they're incurring a lot of expenses as a result of the entourages. And so it's really about the understanding that you have to continue to make money, and you have to make money, when we say, in your sleep. So you can't do it just while you're on stage or in the studio or on the field. You have to have investments.
You have to have your money working for you.
Exactly.
As a financial planner in Miami over the last 10 years, can you talk a little bit about how the financial environment in the city has changed?
It has definitely become more financially savvy. You see more financial firms. One of the wealth management firms that I work with, they just opened up an office in Brickell. And so you're seeing more, more professionalism.
Sophistication.
More perfect word. More sophistication coming into Miami as people start to realize that you're having more established, not just a place where people come to play any longer.
Horace Madison, thank you so much. Enjoy the show.
Thank you very much.
And coming up, why a pop star is our favorite person of the day. Stay with us here on Rise Exchange from Miami Beach.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
News can definitely be improved when reflecting diversity.
A lot of mainstream news, they don't dive into it.
Who wants to hear about negativity all the time?
They only show what they think people want to know and not what people really should know.
World-based stories, that's what I enjoy the most.
I think diversity of news is important to the world so that everybody will be aware of their surroundings and what is happening today.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
I think that people in America do care about what happens throughout the world.
Global warming is probably something that has to be addressed sooner rather than later.
From Somalia and the genocide there, and that's something people don't know about. They have no idea the brevity of that situation.
First thing I think about when I think of Africa is like war and famine and disease.
And right now with the tsunami that happened or the earthquakes in, Japan, we always look out for other people.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time for our favorite person of the day when we choose one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today it is pop star Mariah Carey, who is most certainly not in the holiday spirit. First, she missed a taped performance at New York's Rockefeller Center for the lighting of the annual Christmas tree. Carey kept fans waiting in the freezing rain for hours until they were eventually told she was not showing. Carey blamed her failure to perform on her estranged husband, Nick Cannon, who she was on the phone with the entire time. Come on, you could have just hung up on the guy. Carey said her absence was, however, beyond her control. So Carey had a second chance, sort of, to make it up by singing All I Want for Christmas on the live NBC special on Wednesday. But she totally butchered the song, singing it off key. Here is a little of it.
Make my wish come true.
And so Mariah Carey is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, art for the rest of us. We'll be back from Miami Beach.
Apple unveiled new products today. Did it meet expectations?
Apple stock is up 20%.
The White House says it has proper measures to contain the spread of Ebola.
This seems to be, in some ways, exploding. What are officials saying?
We remain focused on working with our partners on the ground to stop the epidemic.
Enhanced measures have been put in place in Africa and the United States.
This is hitting home in a very real way, and I think, we need to be concerned.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
One of the great things about Arise News, it is truly a multicultural global channel that is paying attention to communities of all different kinds, not just here in the United States, not just in Africa, but all around the world, as we're giving a voice to the people that don't traditionally have the kind of a voice that a mass media organization can have. You're getting here at Arise News that you're not going to find at the other networks is a unique perspective, and I think that's part of what Arise is here to do.
Arise serves underserved communities by bringing them news, information, sports, and entertainment from places that are becoming part of the world economy, that are becoming a part of the world voice, and decisions that are affecting things in the world that people care about. They care about the economy. They care about safety and security. And if you come to Arise and you watch our broadcast, these are the things we're going to bring to you every day, 24 hours a day.
One of my favorite moments on the show was interviewing the author Taya Selassie. She wrote the New York Times bestseller Ghana Must Go, and she actually coined the phrase Afropolitan. And I feel like in part what this show speaks to is the Afropolitan audience. They're African, they're traveled, they're cosmopolitan, they're interested in the diaspora. That's what we deliver here, and Taya in many ways was the perfect embodiment of what I want our viewer to represent.
Stand by.
Oh, it's pouring rain.
It is. While hundreds of the top galleries from across the world are represented here in Art Basel, the event has also created opportunities for emerging artists, and one of the major players there is Untitled. The founder of Untitled, Jeff Lawson, joins us now. Jeff, thank you.
How are you?
You have done this for so many years now. How is this event this year different? It keeps growing.
Well, that's it. We keep growing. So we brought in 2 more curators to work with Omar Lopez-Chayoud, who's the first artistic director. That has helped us to grow the fair to be more international.
How do you therefore compare this to Art Basel, where there's millions of dollars worth of artwork? This appears much more accessible, isn't it?
It is. There's more emerging art here, but we still have mid-career as well, and also secondary market. But it's more emerging and mid-career.
Does any specific themes stand out?
Not any particular themes. I think what's happening in Untitled is a lot of work that's very current. You know, you have 3 curators that are traveling around the world and picking galleries that are showcasing work that's very current right now.
That has got to be a huge challenge for the curators. How do they do this? I imagine the work for next year starts the day after this ends.
It starts now. It's happening all the time. It's 7 days a week all the time.
Why did you come up with this theme?
We wanted to do something different. We wanted to have a fair that created a real dialogue between architecture, art, and curation.
And I imagine the concept that the major player, Art Basel, draws thousands of people here has to help you.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we lost Andrew Schmertz there, and of course he's heading back tomorrow. I wish we could have had more of that report on Basel. But right now, once considered the mecca for all foreign students wanting to study abroad, the United States is no longer the top destination. According to a report issued by the Organization for Economic Cooperation, 1 in 16 students are choosing the United States compared to 1 in 4 in the year 2000. Rise's Gary Anthony Ramsey spoke to Jay Gardner, founder of the Ivy Key, a test preparatory tutoring company on where foreign students are opting to study these days. Take a look.
What is the main reason that a U.S. education appears to be losing its luster?
Well, one of the bigger things is that when you have a lot of international students who used to come over here, again, it used to be 1 in 4, now as you see it's gone to 1 in 16. It's because a lot of those students, you would presume, are going right to the Harvards, the MITs of the world, but a lot of them are actually coming to the public institutions, a lot of the public universities, and because there are less government funding for that, there's higher tuition, and because of that, they're looking at more countries like the UK, some are looking at Australia, to get a similar education, but for a cheaper cost.
Now, normally, I said cheaper, obviously, is a #1 reason that competitors gain ground.
Yeah.
But if you look at the specter of education abroad, a lot of those rates are still quite expensive, right?
They are still quite expensive, but then when you think about just the quality of education, again, the U.S. hasn't been focusing as much as it should have been on higher education. And in that time, in the last decade, we've seen more countries, again, like the UK, we look at Japan, we're looking at South Africa, who put more energy and resources to really building up those higher education. So now they're gaining ground. Now, when you look at the ranking of sort of the top 25 universities across the world, U.S. comprises 13 of those, with the U.K. now being 6. But what we've seen in the last decade is that they've lost, in terms of overall ranking, it's gone down the U.S. In terms of math, science, you know, we see all those stats all the time, right, that we need to kind of gain more ground there. And because of that, what you're seeing is that those international students, even though it's increased overall in numbers, you know, coming to the U.S., again, they're starting to look other places because it's cheaper to get the same thing.
Now we see that the United Kingdom has been the #1 competitor in terms of attracting these foreign students, and even France and Germany have taken hold of the market share. But where are the majority of these new swing students coming from?
We see that a lot of students are still coming from China. They're coming from India. You know, really looking at Asia. That's where it comprises the majority of the students that are coming over to the U.S. or going to UK. That's where you would say majority of the international students are coming from those areas.
Now, since the number of foreign students on U.S. soil, if you're going to play the numbers game, the number has actually gone up, even though the market share has gone down. So why should the U.S. university market, if it were, you can consider it as a business, as they are, why should they or we care?
Well, we should care just from the standpoint that these students come over and bring over billions of dollars, obviously, into our economy, and are highly skilled workers as well. You know, a quarter of the students who actually study here stay in their destination country, you know, where they've studied, and again, they add to the rich economy, and I think that's important for us to understand from kind of dollars and numbers sense.
Please pardon us, we did have some technical difficulties, but we'll make it up for you tomorrow on Arise Exchange. We'll be watching out for the monthly unemployment report from the Labor Department. Now for another look at the markets. Nothing but red across the board. The Dow and S&P 500 back from records. The NASDAQ closing down slightly. I'm Julian Phillips. Thanks for watching us on Arise Exchange. Andrew Schmertz will be with you tomorrow.